Rain hammered the plaza outside Kestrel Bridge and infrastructure as David clutched a cardboard box against his chest. Behind him, a security guard's hand hovered near his shoulder, ready to keep him from turning back. On the lobby badge scanner, a red access-denied light blinked where his identity used to be. Through the glass, Elena pressed her palm to her mouth, watching him go and saying nothing. David stopped once on the sidewalk and looked up at the illuminated company sign fading behind the storm. 3 months earlier, David had stood in a boardroom holding a stack of structural reports no one wanted to read. He had flagged hairline fractures in the Meridian overpass support beams and asked for a full closure to repair them. Marcus Voss had leaned back in his chair and called the repair unnecessary and far too expensive. Elena had caught David's eye across the table, a silent warning to let it go for now. David had refused to sign off on the overpass as safe, and that single refusal had ended his career. Now David lived in a small rented apartment above a hardware store, teaching night classes to pay the rent. Every evening he walked past the Meridian overpass, watching commuter traffic cross the beams he once tried to save. He kept a folder of his original inspection photos locked in a drawer, refusing to throw the evidence away. One rainy evening, his phone rang with a number he had deleted 3 months before. Elena's voice was shaking when David finally answered, telling him the overpass had developed a visible crack overnight. She said the city was hours from declaring an emergency closure, and Voss had asked for David by name. David closed his eyes and remembered the exact beam number he had circled 3 months before. He told her he needed until morning to decide and hung up before she could argue. David spent the night spreading his old inspection photos across the kitchen table, searching for what he might have missed. He noticed a maintenance stamp on one photo that had been altered after he submitted his original report. Someone inside the company had quietly rewritten the inspection record after he was walked out the door. By sunrise, David had a folder of evidence and one impossible decision left to make. David walked back into Kestrel headquarters for the first time in 3 months, badge visitor pass clipped to his jacket. Voss met him at the elevator with a tight smile that did not reach his eyes. In the boardroom, David laid his folder on the table without saying a word, letting the photos speak first. Elena watched from the doorway, arms crossed, waiting to see if anyone in the room would finally tell the truth. Voss insisted the crack was minor, and that David was exaggerating the danger to save his own reputation. David slid the altered maintenance stamp photo across the table without raising his voice. Voss's confident expression cracked for just a moment before he regained his composure. Elena stepped fully into the room and said she had kept a copy of the original unaltered file. A city inspector called during the meeting, warning that a storm surge would reach the overpass within 6 hours. The whole board turned to David, the man they had fired, as the only person who understood the beams. David said he would help, but only if the closure order was signed before he stepped outside. Voss hesitated, knowing a public closure would confirm everything David had said 3 months earlier. By noon, barricades lined the overpass entrance as engineers rushed harnesses and equipment toward the widening crack. David climbed into a harness himself, refusing to send anyone else onto the unstable beam. Rain began to fall as thunder rolled closer, and the crack widened another visible inch beneath his hands. Elena shouted from below that the storm surge had arrived early, cutting his window from hours to minutes. David's hands slipped once on the rain-soaked beam, and for a moment he hung suspended above the flooding street. He thought of every reason to let go and let the company face the consequences alone. Instead, he pulled himself back up and drove the final support brace into place with his bare hands. The widening crack stopped moving just as the storm surge crested beneath the overpass. Voss arrived at the barricade soaked and pale, watching the overpass hold under a beam of emergency floodlights. In front of the assembled engineers, he admitted the original inspection report had been quietly altered. David said nothing, letting the silence carry more weight than any accusation could. Elena stepped forward and told the assembled city officials that David's original report had been correct all along. By dawn, the storm had passed, and the overpass stood open again beneath a clearing pale sky. The board offered David his old position back, along with a formal public apology for how he had been treated. David turned the offer down, choosing instead to open his own independent inspection firm across the street. Elena joined him a week later, telling him she was tired of working somewhere that only listened after disaster struck. Every evening after that, David walked beneath the Meridian overpass without looking up, finally at peace with what he had built.